Councillor Duran.
Here.
Councillor McDonough.
Here.
Councillor Scott.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And I'm assuming, Mr. Clerk, I don't need to read the communication remote Zoom participation, or should I do that? Should I read? I assume I don't need to read the communication remote Zoom participation. Perfect. Thank you. So thank you, everybody. We're here today to discuss 2 items that have been referred to this subcommittee by the City Council. The first is about the mayoral election process, and then, assuming there's time, we will get to the sort of open meeting law and standardization across boards and commissions in the city. So we will start with the mayoral election process. We have in the chamber City Solicitor Corey Williams and Assistant City Solicitor Olivia Harpausen, thank you. We could, I don't know whether the city solicitor wants to start with a summary, or I can do so, because, yep. But I hope I think we'll have hopefully a robust conversation. I was hoping more people would be in the chamber. We have one member of the public at the moment.
It's a little warm out. People are still getting their bearings. I'm happy to provide a quick summary if that's the best way to kind of get the conversation going. This topic has come up before. It's come up several times over the last few years with the council. Just some of the quick highlights I'll mention. The consent decree is something that we will be speaking about at different points, and that was the product of a lawsuit that was filed back in May of 2017. And the consent decree was entered into October 9th of 2019. And without going too far down the rabbit hole, the previous election system that was in the city of Lowell, it was alleged, and ultimately, the case wasn't adjudicated. There was a consent decree, but that there was a violation of the Voting Rights Act, and a few other constitutional, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, Equal Protection Clause. So the consent decree is now the system that we have before us, and a question, a non-binding ballot question, was put on back in 2021. The vote from the council was April of 2021 to put that on for the November 2nd, 2021 election. And that was, I don't know if you want me to just summarize it and you can go into the details of the question, or it was really just the process that we use to elect the mayor. Currently it's by a majority vote of the council, and the question was posed to the public, is that something that they would like to have the residents decide by way of a vote? And it was approximately 75% of the votes that were cast were in favor of it, and that has been something that has been discussed at length many different times. And so this came up again, at least in my time here, 23 into 2024. There was actually a subcommittee meeting November of 2024 where this particular topic was discussed at length, and I was tasked by the council to reach out to the plaintiff's attorney that were party to that lawsuit and have a conversation, open up the lines of communication as to whether or not they might be amenable to basically reviewing a proposal from the council, changing the way that the mayor was elected so that it was done by the residents as opposed to the city council. I reached out. I had a few good conversations with plaintiff's attorney, and really the 2 takeaways from that conversation was the plaintiffs are more than happy to consider a proposal from the city council. Their one ask, and they were very sort of specific and adamant that whatever proposal comes to them for consideration, that it be very detailed and sort of the product that goes in front of them to make sure that's the intent of the council. Like, this is what the council wants to try and move forward in terms of modifying the consent decree to allow this and the various steps that would follow. So at that November Rules Subcommittee, I know it was by way of a vote, it was the desire of that subcommittee to, and it wasn't left with any sort of specific mechanism to get there, but it was, it was certainly the will of that subcommittee to put together a proposal. And I think, it wasn't discussed then. The most practical way to do that probably would be through a subcommittee to actually put a proposal together and refer it back to the council with a recommendation. Because I think it would be challenging, at a public meeting to try and talk about this one thing, because it could be a lengthy conversation, and I think this is probably the best place for it. So I think if something like that is the will of this subcommittee, it can be put together and then sent to the full body for consideration.
Cool, thank you very much.
Sure.
Yeah, that's very helpful. It was helpful to refer back to the various meeting minutes and all. It sounded like in reading the meeting minutes, and I want to make sure my colleagues feel comfortable too, jumping in as appropriate, that there are sort of two issues to consider. One is the substance, that is, what is the proposal that might be put forward to where residents, rather than the city council, would elect the mayor. And then there's a procedural matter about the hurdles to be overcome in terms of modifying the consent decree. But until we have the first piece addressed, there's no point in addressing the second, although I think it's important for the audience to know that it isn't a slam dunk, it sounds like, from the materials that you've provided, that to get the court to change the consent decree.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. It will be very helpful. I think undoubtedly no one would question if both sides assented to it, and that final product that was put in front of a federal judge, if everything was addressed and it all made sense and both sides assented to it, I think that there's a much higher likelihood of making a change like that. If that doesn't happen, then I would be concerned. I don't think the odds would be as much in our favor to be successful there. So, but again, the feeling on both sides has always been like working through this collaboratively has never been questioned from the council or from the other side. So I think that part, that should be a problem.
Thank you. And I think, again, for the audience, it's helpful to note that what we will be discussing today is not a change from our planning form of government, but merely how the mayor is elected. So the role of the mayor would remain the same in terms of chairing the city council meetings and being a member of the school committee and chairing that, and being the ceremonial head, but not being in effect, the chief executive officer of the city. That was not on the part of the referendum. Looking back at the materials from the city council meeting and that November 2024 Rules Subcommittee meeting, it seems there was discussion about how the mayor and the vice mayor then, which sort of goes along with it, would be elected. That might be part of the sort of process. And also there was clearly, I think, guidance from the council that there was interest in having both at-large and district councilors be eligible for the role of mayor. There was also a motion that may have, I don't remember the timing, but at one point a motion was made to follow the process that Worcester uses. But Worcester's process only allows at-large councilors to run for mayor. So that would be in conflict with the goal of having both at-large and district councilors run. Trying to think about sort of how we might pursue this, and again, I think this should just be a conversation amongst everybody here, is if the goal is to have candidates at large or district and run for mayor and potentially for vice mayor, one option is to just have candidates who are running for any of those seats to decide if they also want to run for mayor, and then merely have whoever actually wins a seat on the council, but also is the largest vote getter for the mayoral race to win that position. I've thought about other options, like dealing with sort of a plurality of districts. It would almost be like an electoral college approach, and that clearly got crazy in my view, but there may be others who have a different view. So just curious if anybody has a thought on the process.
I will definitely weigh in on that. I know that you mentioned not wanting to go down that pathway. That is the only way I plan on supporting this at all. I think if it doesn't, I'm not willing to change from the Plan E system. I understand that there were voters, but I don't think that the ballot question was a clear mandate on whether we were going to change from Plan E to Plan B or whatever the plan would be. So I don't think there was a clear mandate there. I would not support, as a district representative, and after the change to the districts, the way it happened, going back to an at-large mayoral system. I personally would never vote for that. I could lean towards like a ranked choice or a most districts one type of a system, but I would just take that off the table for myself. So.
Okay, yeah, okay, and
I
yes.
would point to Worcester. I mean, Worcester has had the same mayor for 12 terms now, and he lives in the highest vote-getting district. So I don't want that to be lost on people that live in other districts that have now gained more representation than they had in the past. So thank you.
No, and I appreciate that, and I think there are other things like term limits and all we should think about as part of any of this process. Councilor McDonough.
Thank you. I wonder if this is, or I guess, do I have to go through you at a subcommittee meeting, or can I just ask you? No, it's informal, right? I like
I think we're
knowing when
suspending the
to
rules.
do.
Unless the chair,
Okay.
tells you to be quiet.
Yeah,
That's,
no,
I think
I think we're
you'll be
good.
okay.
Phenomenal, thank you. Have we ever had a charter review that was not the result of a consent decree that you know of?
No, not that I know of.
Other than, I mean, I guess
yeah.
other when we adopted Plan E, probably.
Right.
But so, I guess my question in looking at, I know Cambridge a couple of years ago adopted a decennial charter review. There were a few other municipalities which would take kind of the prescriptive away from the council. I guess then the question would be, I think this under state law, the charter review committee is, I think, 9 at large.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then it's
Yep.
like, so I guess that opens maybe potentially a different can of worms. It sounds like maybe a smaller can of worms, but I'm not sure. And then a charter review, just kind of, for my understanding and to make sure I'm clear here, that this wouldn't mean necessarily, we're on a new plan or now we're on a new anything. It could, right?
Right.
But I think of the communities that have had a charter review in the past 5 years, substantial charter changes haven't happened, but these kinds of smaller tweaks addressing, some as small as addressing
Yeah.
typos and some for, minor changes.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you're absolutely right. So ultimately it ends up being more of like a recommendation from this charter commission that goes back to the council. And you're correct. Most of them, and it's just my interpretation as I've read through some of them, maybe the bigger issues that initially got that charter review or the charter commission in motion, ultimately that isn't the thing that's changed. It ends up being much smaller things, which is fine, too. It's such a long process, 2 years or 18 months, 2 years, whatever it ends up being. And I do think you bring up, an important point when it comes to looking at your charter. The charter commission involves the public, very much so. Like that's just the way that it's spelled out. And then there's a home rule petition or special legislation, which could achieve the same goal, but there's less opportunities than for the public to speak on, just, at the first reading and the public hearing. So those are the two vehicles to get there. They're just very, very different.
So I guess I would present to my colleagues and kind of say here, I think, personally, I think that looking at a charter review or even adopting an ordinance towards that decennial charter review similar to Cambridge would be something that makes sense. I think it's come up a couple times on the floor. It is weird, right, that we have a charter that predates Plan E, and then we adopted Plan E, and then to my greatest extent of my understanding here is the charter is our charter unless Plan E supersedes it, and
Correct.
no, we really have never sat down and reconciled the two to make a final document.
Yeah, and
I mean, in 80 years or whatever, right? So that's kind of silly.
Yeah, it's I think evolved over time in that, you know, bigger issues or issues that have come up more frequently have been sort of reconciled between the charter and, you know, Chapter 43. But ultimately, like you said, we have to look in two places sometimes. Is it the statute controlling? If the statute doesn't speak on this one thing, then you have to go to the charter. So, but you are correct, and it has not happened in a very long time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you just go over like how that would be put together and how that normally happens?
Actually, can I just ask, are we still on the topic for this meeting in terms of our open meeting law agenda and all?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that we.
Yeah, so this would
given the
all...
public notice.
Yes, because ultimately we would have to change, you know, our charter and everything that kind of like flows through it. So, yeah.
Cool, thank you. Please, yep. So, yeah, Councilor Scott's question.
About charter change? How are committees, like how is it formed? How is it?
Sure. So they're actually, I think it has to be 15% or so of the registered voters. They actually are the ones who elect the commission itself. There's 9 members, and like I think it was Councilor Duran that is that they're at large. They're just from citywide, and I don't know how many times they have to meet, if there even is a requirement. There may be a minimum, probably not a maximum, where they hold meetings. They talk to other municipalities. They get information from other municipalities. They will reconcile the statute with the charter, and it has to happen over at least 18 months. That's just how long that the process is minimum. Typically, it's closer to 2 years, and it encourages different points in the process as you're saying, okay, maybe this is an area we want to make a change. You gather more information there. I know certain municipalities have gotten the help of an outside agency. They've worked with vendors that specialize in this sort of thing. I don't know if it's the Collins Center and places like that to assist. I think that's what Cambridge did. And because you're inundated, my sense of it, I've never been through it, but my sense of it is that you're inundated with all of this information, and I'm sure it feels like you're either going down a rabbit hole, or it becomes cyclical as you're talking about the same thing over and over. So you spread it out over time, and then at the end, there'll be a final report. And I think Cambridge's was like 500 pages or 600 or 700 pages or something like that with recommendations. And that's what goes back to the council. And then the council will have a public hearing to determine whether or not they're going to accept those recommendations, accept other parts of the report. And you kind of go from there if you're going to go in that direction. Otherwise, really something as simple as special legislation, notwithstanding the consent decree, special legislation is all you would need. Just a very different process.
So, and a process that would address not just this issue around the election of the mayor, but really making sure the whole charter works and makes sense.
Yeah, with the charter commission, yes.
Yeah,
I think absolutely that's a byproduct of that process, is you would, for the first time in a while, say we've been through the entire charter.
And I think that makes a lot of sense in and of itself. The question is, we've now been sitting with a non-binding referendum that 75% of the voters supported somehow their election of the mayor, and we don't have a path forward on that issue in the meantime. And so we might have a 2-year process to deal with the charter as a whole, which might or might not touch on that, and we still then have to deal with the consent decree. So
right. So
yeah.
I guess to your point, there may be a scenario where if this body or the council, they come up with a proposal, they land on one, they say, all right, this is the path we want to go forward. We talk to plaintiff's attorney, everything's fine. We get in a federal court, and the judge says, yep, no problem. So there could be a scenario where that happens first, and then we get the judgment, you get relief from judgment from the court, we would then file special legislation. We could get that turned around, relatively quickly compared to maybe the 2-year process of the Charter Commission. So one piece could happen first until we get through the entire Charter Commission, possibly.
So I guess you may have answered my question before I asked it, which is great. We could do both and, right? Like we could potentially, and I think part of the appeal of a charter review is how intensive the public engagement process is. And I think that over the last 2-something years of trying, longer than that, of trying to answer this question of how we elect the mayor, we now, past councils, have seen that this is really not as simple as, just go poof and now we elect the mayor. And to me, this is something where the charter review, if we can solve this without the charter review, great. But one of the advantages to me of the charter review is that once that charter review committee is formed, it exists until they make their recommendations, where there's most likely, there's turnover in any elected body, and this is a tasked body with the whole review. So if our efforts fall short or don't, cross the finish line, instead of you now needing to get another subcommittee up to speed all over again, there's this group who's been plugging away.
For sure.
Okay.
So, but it sounds like the timing for doing a charter review is there needs to be an election,
Right.
and a decision by the city council to hold such an election, which would probably be either this November or next November. In order to avoid the costs of a special election, or at least that would be a consideration for the council to, include. And then, so we might be talking at earliest the charter review process to be changed or finished in 2020, late 2028 perhaps. So we're quite a ways out. I think it would make sense for this committee to talk further also, because I think you're right, Councilor McDonough, that it's a kind of yes and opportunity. I do think we owe it to the residents to make to really talk through what the mayoral process change could look like. I was hoping there might be more people from more residents here to weigh in on that. I know that, Councilor Scott has made clear her view that the process should not be an at-large process. I don't know if Councilor McDonough, if you have a view, because I have concerns about other approaches, but I'd love your thoughts too.
I think this is really hard, actually. To be completely honest, because I think that I also would like to vote for the mayor in the ballot box and not on some random Monday or the first Monday in January, and only if you win a council seat. I do think that's not great. But then what does that process look like? And I think Councilor Scott makes a very good point about how long the mayor of Worcester has been the mayor of Worcester. And in Lowell, at least thus far, we've pretty consistently done 1 2-year term and then you're on to the next role. And we're either going to wind up with an extra 2 pages in the ballot to put 11 councilors on, right? If we're going to say district councilors too, but they have to run citywide, okay, I don't know what anyone's odds are or why you would want to run you're going to run a citywide game, but not for an at-large seat. Or we're going to just be bouncing between the 3 at-large councilors as the mayor, and it gets messy. That's I guess where I'm at. I'm not opposed to any change. I'm having a very hard time seeing a clean option.
And I'll just tell you from all these conversations that I've been a part of, this is the very spot where the most difficulty is for all the different councilors that I've heard speak or I've spoken to. This is the very point. Right here. One crazy, because this is, and so I want to be clear that this is kind of the let's throw something at a wall here, because I think that is, to your right, that is the sticking point that we've gotten to. One idea that I have heard in some smaller municipality, I know Watertown does this. They have I think they're technically a city now, but they have a manager and a council president. Is what they do is the council president / mayor runs at the top of the ticket for that one seat. If they're not any councilor is the mayor, they run to be president of the city council.
But then it's an at-large election,
Oh, yeah, I was
which
gonna
is then the problem is
they're
that
not
it's an
right?
at-large election. The advantage is that it leverages elected people's egos to encourage turnover, because if you have two people running for one mayor spot or president of the council spot, only one gets the only one who still gets the council seat is the one who wins the mayor's seat. The other person is gone. You can't run for both things. And I'm not in love with that. That is just that's like the third option, I guess, that I've heard.
Yeah.
One thing I did look at is the possibility of doing kind of whoever wins the mayoral seat in a plurality of the districts. That is, so not everybody might run for the mayoral seat. It may not be a given that the people voting for their district councilor would automatically want that person to be mayor. It may be, but not necessarily. So in effect, people would, in each district, you'd vote for your district councilor and 3 at-large people, and in addition, you'd vote for someone as mayor. And then you could consider whoever wins, the majority of, or perhaps a plurality of the districts would be the mayor. Now, you might end up with 8 different people, so, and then you'd have to go to some sort of another process, which would either be number of votes. I think there is also potentially maybe a misincentive there, because potentially if the district councilors are running for the seat, but you win a district by winning the fewest number. You could win a district but have the fewest number of votes in effect, across the city. It's that balance between all at large and all district. But I have thought about that as another option. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
This was the thought that I had as well, as far as the majority of districts. My concern is back to the at-large election. You'll have people running for mayor that, now are going to campaign kind of exclusively in 2, 3 certain neighborhoods. They're going to maybe work a little harder for 2 or 3 neighborhoods where that's the majority of the vote. And I think that's what we're trying to get away from. At least with the district representation, all the districts are equal. It doesn't matter how many, if it had the least number of votes, it doesn't matter. It's an equal district. So that's kind of where I was coming from, the majority of districts.
So what would happen, though, if there weren't a majority? If, let's say, there were 8 different councilors, 8 different, a different person won each district, then would you go, I think then, to me, the default, because I have tried to work this through, I actually tried to think this through with past elections and who, speculating who might have won.
You'd have to go to vote count.
Yeah.
But,
And then,
but the point would be,
like,
the chance
Centerville and
the chance of someone not
Yeager
winning,
would.
the chance of someone not winning 2 of them, though, not every district rep is going to run for the seat. So I think that's kind of far-fetched. And then you'd probably have to default back to, you have to have a default, obviously.
Yeah, right. Otherwise, you'd be leaving open an opportunity for there never to be resolution, and that's
The person that came in second the
Right.
most in those districts, almost like a ranked choice, versus an at-large number. So.
Yeah, I think
this is it.
Yeah.
This is that same roadblock that we always hit. It's very difficult. I've never thought or said this was easy. That is absolutely for sure.
No, exactly. But the measure was put on the ballot for a reason by
True.
a council that, I don't know what the goal was, but we're here to, people have asked about, when we're going to make progress on this. So we have an obligation to try to at least present something for, further discussion, I think.
If I may, and I'm not advocating for this, but the simplest thing to do is you mirror Worcester, you copy Worcester, and I'm not saying that's I'm just if you're looking for like the simplest option that we can use as a template because we're unable to kind of get to that point where everyone's comfortable with something, their system is something that works and we could look at. But again, I'm not advocating, just I wanted to at least say that once.
And I would just comment that Worcester made their system for what worked for them, right? Because they also are not following the traditional Plan E.
Correct.
So, I mean, we obviously can, do the same if we're trying to work it together and work what we think is fair to all the districts and all the residents in the city.
Can I ask, only because I'm drawing a blank right now, do you know how Cambridge gets their mayor? Because that's our only other Plan E, right?
Yeah, that's council.
It's
Same as us.
Same as
yeah,
us.
the
Same as us.
city council majority vote. Yeah.
But that was not helpful.
Well, no, it's okay.
I was hoping.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Yeah, we do have a couple of people in the audience, including so if any resident wants to speak in their capacity as a resident, if we're comfortable, if you could come up and say your name and address and.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Corey Robinson, 5 West 10th Street. I'm here as a resident. I like what the solicitor brought forward as far as looking at if it's something under Plan E, the city's considering going towards allowing the public to elect the mayor. I like the Worcester model. I think they did take into account the district format as well as the at-large, and it kind of does set pretty much a base template for us. Now, whether or not we have to configure it to fit exactly what we're looking for, but I think it is a good starting point, so I thank you for bringing that forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, thank you very much. I think the city solicitor, I think the Worcester model only allows at-large candidates to run for mayor. Is
Right,
that
yeah,
correct? So it doesn't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have 9 councilors, 5 at large, and only those that are running at large could be elected mayor. And then it's just highest vote getter is mayor, second highest is vice mayor.
I was curious, and this might get more into the charter change question, but I'm curious whether if we change the title, because you had mentioned, Councilor McDonough, that in Watertown they call the person president. I've seen chair. I've looked at other actually states or cities across the country where they have sort of various versions of this, including versions of Watertown's model. And I think the term mayor is something that people really hold on to dearly. But I wonder if we were to change it to chair, whether that might change both the perception of the role and maybe the opportunity for people as they think about voting for someone. It feels less like a loaded thing that means more than it does in a Plan E form of government. And just curious what my colleagues think about that and as part of this discussion.
I've also considered that as an alternative. So another one that would appease me, at least. So thank you for that.
I get hung up on this one because we are accustomed to saying that the mayor is largely ceremonial, and they are largely ceremonial, but they also have these like weird emergency provisions. Like, they are also the mayor, right? They are both in terms of civil process and military, whatever. They are the head of the city, which is strange to think about. I don't know. I'm tripping over it, but you would be the chair of the city council, but you would still be empowered. You would still have all of the powers, what limited powers they are, under Section 40, Chapter 43 of being a mayor, but we would call you not mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I get in that scenario, it would be something as simple as you would just file special legislation to amend the statute, just to amend the statute language as it applies to Lowell, and you would just strike mayor, and it was chair or president, or because
I don't know. I actually don't like that, but I understand why some would. I don't know. Maybe I'm.
I'll be honest.
Conservative on this one.
I've never even thought about that before, but But you could be right. I mean, it makes sense to me, at least somewhat. I don't know.
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not like a strong no. I don't know. There's a part of me that likes mayor as I don't know. You gonna hang up the portrait of the chairman? Yeah, you could.
We could still hang.
You could still do it. No, I don't know. There's a part of me that just likes a little bit of pomp.
Yeah.
I guess I would just add, as I said, I'd be amenable to that. My first choice is to stay with our current system that we have. I do think residents have a say in their mayor. They have counselors, district counselors, at-large counselors that they can all let them know who they want to vote for, and if they don't support who they chose, they cannot vote for them the next time, the counselor. So as far as going to this change system, as I said, I think it gives an advantage to certain districts. It goes back to at-large mayoral elections, and I think the only alternative would be either, like I said, a ranked choice or a most districts one type of system, so.
So coming back first to the title, having looked at others, so the planning forms of government, Worcester and Cambridge refer to their person in this role as mayor, but other cities in Massachusetts have other terms. They use president, they use chair, they use council president. So there are other terms for this role, although maybe this role in planning is unique. It's unique, but I'm not sure it's that unique.
Sorry, I'm not. I'll use Councillor Scott's term. I'm amenable. I guess less amenable, but amenable. It's not really a policy sticking point as much as it is. I just like the term. I'm just, that's just. I'm not. I don't really have a deep-seated defense here of mayor versus chair. I'll be silly about it, that's all.
And I would add the other plans of government within Massachusetts, there are plans that are a city manager with a select board, like president, they have, right? I mean, a chair. It's just a different form.
Right. So I just mentioned that to Olivia. I'm going to have to go back and read under Chapter 43 the different forms of government. And if I remember correctly, it specifically states like chair in the statute as opposed to like the mayor is the chair here, but I think it just says chair in certain provisions of the statute. I'm gonna have to go back and look because that just dawned on me. Maybe that's why they are called that, because that's just the way the legislature put it together all those years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, I did look it up. Plan A, I think, is referred to as the mayor. Plan B is the mayor, and I think Plan F. But I don't take my word. Yeah, yeah. Yes, correct. They probably are strong mayors. So where we are is, because I do think we owe something to residents to not just sort of keep throwing our hands in the air on this issue. Yes, and go ahead.
Sorry, just
Yeah.
one more, just another question.
Yeah.
So we obviously, you had hoped for some public involvement. I think that was kind of the plan to get, and how we could possibly, some public involvement, some public input. I understand there was a ballot measure. I argue whether or not that was for a Plan A or Plan E form of government. I don't think it was clear in the ballot question. I would like to hear from the public. Is there any way we could bring these discussions to, like, the neighborhood meetings or to like different, just to hear some of their thoughts on why or what their reasoning was for the change?
Absolutely.
And if it's completely, we want to elect our mayor, maybe, like I said, they really want the mayor to run the city. I don't know, but I just feel like we need to hear from residents what they want.
Yeah, and I think, like many other issues, there are a lot of advantages to those neighborhood meetings, and there could be people at those meetings that they think Tom Golden is the mayor, right? And or something like that. So maybe it'll be helpful to explain that in that moment, and maybe that will change how they feel. Maybe it won't. Maybe they do understand that Eric is the mayor and that Tom is the city manager. Maybe some don't. They're like, oh, well, I wouldn't have voted that way on that, or vice versa. So I do think that would be helpful.
And as far as, I think it would be fair to ask about at-large, or in light of the consent decree and everything, do you prefer ranked choice? Do you prefer, some other method?
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a good opportunity there for, to provide information to the public in a more of like an intimate setting where someone might want to speak up and ask a question, or might not be as hesitant to ask a question. Like, some people don't want to come up here and speak, at the lectern. Maybe in a neighborhood meeting, they'd be able to do that.
Thank you.
I guess one of the things is how, if we were to go that route, how would we gather that information? How would we make sure we're sort of putting things on the same page for everybody in terms of, describing what the options are? Ranked choice voting was on the ballot way back when and was not the approach that was taken. But I think there are actually a lot of decisions about how one of the issues at the time was we didn't have clarity about how the runoff would be done, whether we were going to use the Cambridge or the Minneapolis system. And they come up with very different results, or can, not automatically. So there's a lot of details that would need to be worked out. And I think just putting forward, well, do you want ranked choice voting when we've sort of gone down a very different path is probably not fair to anybody, because I do think the process matters, and it's not just sort of a high-level discussion. So I don't know if anybody here has thoughts, and I guess I'm looking to you, Ms.
I think at least one suggestion that I could make, and it's not something that we do frequently, and that's true of most municipalities, but a special meeting could be called at some point in the future just to discuss this one issue, because it's obviously going to be a challenge to talk about this thing at a regular city council meeting. There's just not enough time to dedicate to one. So it might be worth at some point, if it's the will of the body, to just call a meeting dedicated to this. I personally think that's the only way that we will be able to really finalize a proposal in looking to, modify the consent decree and then move forward with making those changes. I think everyone needs to be in the same place for an extended period of time. I think that's just my opinion, but I've thought that, learning from some of the previous lessons that we're here now, I think that is the way that will best suit everybody.
There is someone else from the public interested in speaking, so if you can say your name and address.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Rita Mercier. I live at 221 Burnham Road. I am speaking in no capacity other than the resident of the city of Lowell. And I remember in November 2nd of 2021, where the voters overwhelmingly supported in favor of selecting a mayor by themselves by popular vote. Yes was 7,429 to no 2,411. Having said that, I honestly, firmly believe that the vote of the mayor should be that of the public. How do we get there? I am a little bit skeptical about making it for at-large people only. It's my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with me, but I think everybody that runs for office should indicate in a separate place, I'm running for District 4, let's say, but I'm also running as a mayoral candidate. Having said that, you could think, well, what if they get it and there's no representation of their district? Well, what happens when someone is a city councilor and they want to just stop being a city councilor? They have other obligations. Maybe it's their health. It's the next person in line that gets chosen, such as Corey Belanger took the seat and assumed the position of the person that left. So if it's a person, let's say, for District 4, and he puts his name or she puts her name on as a mayoral candidate, and let's say she gets the highest number of votes, so she comes over from Ward 4 to be the mayor, but yet there's nobody in that seat, well, the second person in line can assume that position and take the seat. I don't see how difficult that is. Or is it through you, Madam Chair, to the city solicitor, that we have to follow a pattern because there's the A form of government, Plan E form of government, that's us. Well, where did all these plans come from? Why can't we say, and I personally love Plan E form of government where you have a city manager and a strong manager, but a city mayor. It's a ceremonial obligation, but they work like a bugger and they oversee the school committee as such. I still say it's a Plan E form of government, but why can't we improvise and say it's Plan E.1? Because we decided that, just like someone decided Plan B form of government. It never was there before until somebody did it. Why can't we do it? Why do we have to follow? I think we have to follow the rules in this respect and go by the legislature. I accept that. But why can't we devise what is best for, oh, geez, it's a spam, I'm sorry. Why can't we devise our plan? Make it E.1, Plan E.1. You can't say no that people have a right to do what they think is right, although we have to follow rules and let the legislature look at it. But I'm sure they could understand. We could put something together, and you're on the right track. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much. I actually do think there is no sort of standard, almost Plan E form of government, given only 3 cities are in it, and each actually does things differently, given we have the consent decree. We don't actually comply with the standard form, so we're already in E.1, so this might be E.2 that we're thinking about. I don't know if there is anything additional, Mr. Solicitor, that you'd like to add to that, but.
No, I think to Rita's resident Mercier's point, I think yes, there absolutely is a way, and Worcester went through it in the 80s when they had their standard legislative Plan E form of government, and they decided that it didn't work for them, and they went through a charter commission and they filed special legislation and they modified their form of government to what worked. At least it worked for them in the 80s. Stands to reason it still does, but that is definitely something we can do. I think, again, it's putting pen to paper and figuring out exactly what that is. So back in the 80s in Worcester, there was the 11 so they had their 9 councilors, and it was the mayor was elected by a majority vote of the council, and then they said, no, 9 councilors is fine, but 5 are going to be at large. They're the only ones that can run for mayor. So at that time, that was what worked for them. So if we can identify that, there is a path forward for the Plan E .2, whatever we're at.
Okay, no, I think I want to try to start wrapping up next steps.
Okay.
But.
Thank you. I was going to ask, kind of in light of the fact that it's 6:20. I can tell we're getting close to the end. Is there any way that you could present, if you could, I don't know if I asked you for an information to go to the council or not, but if we could get something on the format, in writing on this is a charter commission, how you might go about doing it, just kind of, hey, this is something we might want to think about, I think, towards President Mercier's point.
Normally, like that, in this moment, that would be in the form of a motion, but it doesn't have to be. I'll just jot it down. I'll put something on. I can just put it through as like information from the manager or something like that.
Right, and then that would kind of prompt us, one, probably to talk again as a subcommittee on that, and it would also bring to the broader council and the broader public, hey, here's one way that we might actually be able to get to a resolution.
No problem.
Thank you.
I do think that Councillor Scott's point about getting residents involved, I had hoped and tried to encourage people to participate today, but that wasn't that very successful. We had a couple of residents, but not a lot. So I think the neighborhood groups is important are important to include. So the question is, and I think you're right that, a special meeting will be needed because we will need to get into the nitty gritty. The question is, which should come first? Should there be a conversation at a special meeting, and then take it to the subcommittee, to the neighborhoods, and maybe come back, because I think we will hear from the neighborhoods. This should be an iterative process. It should not be sort of once and done, like you like it or you don't, people. It should be something where we're learning from each other to try to hone in on something that, if we can, that makes
I agree.
sense.
I think Council Scott's right. I think it's spot on. Like the process, to me, makes perfect sense to start in the neighborhoods. And it would be a shame if we got too far down the road and then turned around, went out to the neighborhoods, and they're like, no, that's not what we want. That doesn't work. That's not. So I think starting there makes a lot of sense to me, my opinion.
Go ahead. So I think the only thing that might be helpful is if, we have a lot of ideas on the table about at-large and/or district, about how we would elect the mayor, those processes. I think the Charter Commission can be done as a separate sort of parallel path. But to try to ensure that each of the districts get sort of a summary of kind of, like, this is the options, it might be helpful.
I can put something together that could be, distributed at a neighborhood meeting or.
That's my next question.
Yeah.
Who? So would that be someone that would be able to visit
Oh,
the
you're-
neighborhood
yeah,
meetings
sorry.
from the law department at all? Or, I mean, we
Sure.
could certainly attend and we can provide our feedback, what
That's-
we feel are priorities, but I
no
guess
problem at all.
there has to be someone there that's kind of originating the materials to the neighborhood groups.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.
Cool.
problem.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Sure.
So I think we are probably have beaten this issue to a pulp at the moment, but there's clearly more to do on it.
Should we,
yes.
are
Yeah,
we
go.
authorized to have you go do that, or should that be a motion to bring that to the whole
Thank you.
body?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would, I could say that I'm offering up my services, of course, but yeah, maybe it could come in the form of a motion requesting that the city manager have the city solicitor, assist or attend.
Outreach.
Yeah,
as far as the
outreach at
voting
neighborhood
system
meetings
goes,
about-
As far as the voting system.
Yeah.
So I'd make
That'd be
that in
fine.
the form of a motion.
Okay.
Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And then I'd make a motion to, oh, no, I'm sorry. We had another item. Did you want to continue it?
Yes. Do we need can we do the motion on the charter review?
Oh,
or
do you
we
want the
it
motion?
here?
Uh,
City council.
You don't
We'll
have
do
to.
that.
I
Yes.
Okay, you'll just do it?
I jot it down. I'll just do it. It'll
I was
come in
gonna say
through.
that's- okay.
It'll come in through an informational from the manager. That's fine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, and then, so what do I do? I motion to continue the meeting at a later date? I just don't
Sure.
know how I. Motion to adjourn?
Or just,
Okay.
yeah, set up a new meeting. Sure.
Yeah,
And-
yeah, because we have our second topic that
Oh,
we'll
right.
get to.
Perfect. That's right. We didn't even-
Everybody can read up on it beforehand.
Yes. Binders for all of you.
So the motion to adjourn? Motion to
Okay.
adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Very good.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Great.